Hello everyone, nice to meet you. Right now I will explain about our class, and today we have in the 12th meeting. For this meeting, we still will learn about PHP, but for this week we learn more advanced because we will connected our PHP file or our PHP project with MySQL or with database. Okay, so the aims for today meeting, the first is, I'm sorry, it's still in Bahasa. Understand the concept about web programming using PHP and MySQL is the first aims, and the second aims is to understand how to implement database in the website using PHP and MySQL. Or MySQL, usually I say it in the bahasa, but maybe you call it MySQL. Okay, what is MySQL? So MySQL is the database. Is one of the DBMS or database management system. But for first, what is database? Maybe I think all of you have learned or have know about it. Database is defined as collection of information stored in a computer systematically. So it can be checked using computer program to obtain information from the database. Okay, and we can using many software for manage our data or database. Usually the application or the software using for manage the database called DBMS or database management system, and one of them is MySQL. And MySQL is created in 1979 by Michael White News. And in this course, we will using MySQL for our DBMS. Okay, so PHP and MySQL is one of the most popular combination of programming language and database used to build website because this is free. Two of them is free, and it's also have a good performance to make web project and the database. Okay, so MySQL is widely used as website database for the following reasons. The first, it can run on the server. So in this case, we using XMPP as our local host and the server, and also it can run XMPP also can run our DBMS MySQL. And the second is MySQL is ideal for small and large application. So if you want to make large application, it also can manage the big data, but for small, it also usually we can use MySQL because it simple and it widely used. And the third reason is MySQL is reliable, easy to use, and the fourth is use standard SQL. Like maybe all of you have know that MySQL using query for get the data, create the database, or insert data, and many others. And the query that used by MySQL is a standard. So like the for get the data, we are also using select, or to insert data, we are using insert. It's not different with the standard SQL, so it will be more easier to use. And the fifth is MySQL is free to download and use. So it's one of the most reasonable because it's free and we don't need to buy the application and the TPMS. So you don't need to install any other application because you already have XMPP. We just need to run the Apache module for the local host or for the server, and MySQL, the second module for running the DBMS using MySQL database. Okay, I think all of you have installed this XMPP application in your computer, right? Next part, we will learn how to make connection with my PHP to MySQL. One thing that you must know, when we will run database, when we want to get something for database or manage database, we must connect first to that database. So using PHP, we can make connection between our web project or our website to a database MySQL. The function actually PHP have provided us the function, the default function to make connection between PHP and MySQL. The function is MySQL I underscore connect like this. So when we type this or when we using this syntax, we can easily make connection between PHP and MySQL. This syntax or this function have three parameters. You can see here the first parameter is server name, the second is username, and the third is password. Okay, because we are still using localhost or Apache web server, so the server name must be localhost. uh, for example, if you already hosting have web hosting or you put your file into a hosting web, the server name here can be different. Maybe you will using your website or the URL for hosting that database or your project. Okay, the second parameter is username. For the default, our username is root. Okay, so if you have another username in your database or in your MySQL, you can change the root with your username. And for the default, the password is empty. So you can give the quotation mark without anything inside or anything between. Okay. First, I will give you example. I will give you demonstration about how to make connection. Okay, so this is our code. I write or I make variable name host name and I put localhost here. The second is username and the third is password. After that, to make connection, you can make variable name connect, and this will return Boolean value true or false. So if the Boolean value that return is true, it means that your connection is work. But if the value is false, it means that you failed to connect your PHP project with the MySQL. Okay, so this is how to make connection. We are using MySQL connect function first, and we put three parameters here. And then we will check it. If it return true, okay, if it return true, we will print connection to MySQL successful, and if it's return false, we will print MySQL connection failed like this. Okay, I will try to run this. Don't forget to start your Apache module and MySQL module in your XMPP. After that, we can open here. The name of the file is connection.php. Okay, so it shows that connection to MySQL successful. So it means you have connect your project or your PHP file to MySQL database. For example, if I stop this, of course, the MySQL module will be stopped and it won't run. If I run this, okay, so it will display an error. No connection could be made because the target machine actively refused it. Connection to MySQL failed. Of course, it failed because I stopped the MySQL module, right? Okay. So don't forget to start your MySQL module when you are run or when you are want to finish our job sheet in this week's. Okay, next I will go to create MySQL database. The advantages when we are using PHP, we can make database without opening PHP MyAdmin, or maybe you are using MySQL Yoke or any other GUI or user interface for adding the data or creating the database. You just need to code, or you just need to write the code inside the PHP, and you can run your query into the MySQL database. Okay, so the first we will try to create a MySQL database. Like you see here, creating MySQL database can be done in various ways using interface from localhost PHP MyAdmin, or you can also query in PHP MyAdmin or using another application. But in this case, we use the third method, execute queries in PHP. Okay, so you need to define your query first in the PHP. PHP also have provide the default function for query named MySQLi query like this. Like the function we have before in connection, it also have parameter, but the parameter is the first is connection. So because we need the connection, we must run the MySQLi connect first. And the second is the SQL or the query. Okay, so for the query, we need two parameter. The first is connection and the second is the query. And the query for making database in MySQL is create database and the database name. Okay, and don't forget, after we run the query, please to close the connection using MySQL I underscore close function. Why we must close the connection? Because if we want to run another database, it can be error or it can be confusing for the MySQL because we have many database. So it's safe to close your connection after you are doing query or connection in one database, and close it, and then you connect again with another database or with the same database. Okay, it's safer to always open and close. So I will give you example about create the database. Where is my code? So this is the code. Like you see before, for my SQL, for my SQL I query, we need connection. So first we will make connection for in here. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Where is my create database file? Okay, here. So we make connection like the one we have before. It actually the same. You can copy and paste here from your connection. After that, we will make database using query. So you need to define the query first. The query for make database is create database and the name of the database. In this practicum, we name the database with web_db. Okay, after that, we will run the query, but first we need put the parameter or the variable connection first. Okay, this is the variable connection and then the query. It also similar with MySQL underscore connect. It will return the Boolean value true or false. So it will be true if your query works, and it can change or manipulate your database. But if if it return with a false, it means that your query is failed and you can manage your database. Don't forget, after we are doing the query here, we will close the connection. So to close it, we need parameter connection inside. Okay. So I will run this. I'm sorry, I will open my PHP my admin first because I have the similar database, or I already have database with the same name. I will remove it first so it won't be any error when I creating the database. Okay, this is my database. I will drop it first. Okay, next I will run create DB. Okay, connection successful and database create successfully. For check it, you can refresh here and your new database will be shown here because this is new. Of course, it still have no table inside. Okay, next. After we creating the database, we must be want to make a table, right? So we will make MySQL table. It actually same with the one that we have done before, like we are creating the database. The difference just in the query. So for the one before, the query is for make a database, and next to create a table, we replace the query with query for creating table. The query for create tables is like this: create table and the table name, and you can put the column name, first column, second column, until the how much column you want. And next to column is the data type. The type is like integer and maybe a varchar or text and anything that you need. Okay. Okay, so this is the code for create the table. Okay, this is for create a table. First, you must connect your PHP file to MySQL database like this. But we have one more parameter. Why? Because the table that we want to make, it must be inside in a database. So we also need initialize the name of the database first. So the additional parameter, I have a variable name database, and this is our database name, and you put it here in MySQL Connect. You add one parameter database. Okay, but it's still similar. It will return true or false value. Okay, so first make connection and additional parameter using database name. After that, we also make query. The difference is the query that we have is the for create the database, the table, not the database. So here is create table and the name of the table. In this practicum, we will make a table named student, and it have three column. The first column is ID, and this is integer, and I want to make it as primary key. So maybe you still remember primary key is like the unique key of the table. So if it a parameter, it must be different from one row to another, or from one record to another. It must be unique, right? And it also auto increment. Maybe you still remember auto increment. Auto increment is when our value inside here, so the value of the ID will be at +1 every we add a new table or a new data. Okay, so auto increment. For auto increment, actually you don't need to insert it because MySQL already know if it's auto increment, the value must be from the previous value and +1 or add with 1. Okay. And the second is name using varchar 30 and not null. Why it not null? So it must be filled. You cannot fill the data just using ID or address only, but it must be name. Okay, it will be strange if the student data have not a student name. Okay, and the third is address. For address is varchar 100 and it not null. So you can fill it or you can make it empty. And then we will make the query. The query is like the one we have before. The first parameter is connection and the second is the query, right? Okay, it will be like this. And don't forget to close your connection. Okay, I will run it. Create table. Okay, student table created successfully. If I refresh it, okay, we have student table, and you can see the structure will be similar that we have defined in our query. It's a primary key and also auto increment. It's not null, so default null. The value of null is no, because the address we not define with not null, so it can be null. The value of the null column is yes. Okay. Next, after we have the column, of course we want to insert something, right? So we will insert data. It's also similar with the one we have before. The difference is in this query. The query that we are using is insert into name table and then uh, table name, I think, and the column one, the name of the column, and after values we put the value for that column. Okay, this is the example. We repeat again for the make the connection. After that, we change the query here for using insert query. Insert into the table name is student and we add the name and address only. Why? We don't need the add for the ID because ID already auto increment. We don't need to put it again here. And this is the value. If you see here, we have three data, so we must be add this three data in one query, right? Okay, this is how to run the query, and this is for close the connection. Okay, I will run it. Okay, new record add successfully. We will refresh here. We have three data here, so it's success to insert the new data into your MySQL database. Okay, the next is read the data. We already make database, make table, insert the data into the new table, and we want to read the data, right? So to read the data, it's actually same with we have before. We are using query. Query for read the data is select the column. If we are want to display all the column we can using star and then from and the table name. Okay, the one that we will add is different. It's a little bit different with we have before. Is we will add the new function here is MySQL I underscore fetch underscore array and then the query. Why we need to add this? Because when we are running the query for the select, it must be returned with many data, right? If we run select, it can be one data or maybe two or maybe three or maybe more. If we have many data, we cannot display it once. So we must display it one by one. To display it one by one, we are using this function fetch array. So it will get the first row of your data and then the second row, the third row until your last data. Okay. How to make it? Okay, this is the example. Maybe if you see here, oh, I have here. Okay, like this. This is I have the table to display it because we have many data. We already have three data, and this is include my connection. What is this? Include is like to including the code from a file. So, like you see before, we are repeating my connection again and again. To make it more simple, uh, we can write the connection into one file. So this is I have my connection.php file. This is for using for make connection. So in other page, we don't need to repeat to write the connection again. We just need to include, right? So when we include all of the code inside this will be including in your code. So when we select, we include my connection, it's automatically running the connection. And then we just need to make the query, and this is the result. So for the query select, we have many data that we get. So to save it, we can save in the one variable or array variable here in an array, and then we run this array one by one using MySQL fetch array. So this is the code. We check first number of rows from the result. If it's more than one or more than zero, or it's one or more, it will display the data from the first data until your last data like this. So this is the while here to display one by one. Okay, we will try to open it. This is the select table. I'm sorry. Okay, so it will be showing like this. You have ID, name, and address, and this is the data from your MySQL. Next, after it, we want to edit or update your data. It's actually similar with the one we have before. We just need to add the query for update the data. This is the query. I think you have learned about it before. Update table name and then set the column that you want to change with the value. And we need to where constraint. Where constraint, we using the constraint where because the data that we want to update, it must be not all of the data. Usually when we want to update, we choose one data or maybe several data only, not all of them. So if we want to choose some data to update it, we can using where constraint here. For our case, because we have ID here, we want to change from the ID. Okay, so actually I have another page, name home CROD here. Okay, I will try to open it like this. Here I have a button to add the data. Okay, so here when like we have before, will add the data, but the data that we add here is from the form. Okay, so this is the example. Okay, where is it? Insert form. We have the form first. The form is for inputting the data. Have name input here, my name. The name of the address is my address, and we will send it. Okay, the form has action insert process.php. It means when I click the button, it will be processed by this file. So the file to process when adding the data is insert process, and here I using method get. So when I am using get, here I using $_get to get the value from our input form. Okay, like we have before, we must make connection first. We don't need to repeat it. We just need to using include, and this is the query like this. Actually, it's the same with that we have before. Okay, I will try. Like this. New record add successfully. So when I refresh it, it will be like this. And we also have edit. Okay, I will try it. When we click the edit, actually it is same with the insert before. The difference is when the form when we insert, the form is empty, right? Because we want to add the new data. But when we update, usually we already have that data and we want to change it, right? So we will show it first into our form. Okay, this is the edit form. The difference is we have value here to getting the old value. And for ID, I add the read only. Why read only? Because we don't need to change it. We don't need to change it because it will be dangerous, or it can be an error when we put something here with the value that we already have in our database or we have in MySQL. Okay, so this is the edit, and for the action is edit process.php. The method is get is same with we have before. Like this, we are using $_get, and the query is for update. Like this, you can try yourself. And we add the constraint where, and we get the ID here. So it will get the ID for when I click the for data. Okay, I will like this. Okay, so the value here will be update like this. Okay, the last one is for delete. Same with we have before update. For the delete, when we want to delete, we must be know which the data that we want to delete. So for the query, we need to add the constraint where here. And in our case, the where is we are using the ID. Okay, so when I click, for example, I click the for data, the delete here, it will be process, or it will be delete the for data depend on the ID that we choose, ID of the data that we choose. Okay, uh, this is the code, because for the delete we don't need the new form, so it directly the file for run the query. Okay, this is the uh, connection, and this is ID that we want to delete, so we get the ID first. And then this is the query for delete, like this. And this is the query to run the delete. If it's true, or if it's successful, it will be reload home page. And if the query is failed, it will be display the message file. Okay, don't forget to close. Okay, I will try it. Okay, it will be delete from your data. If you check your PHP My Admin, it also same here with the one that you have in your project. Okay, so that's all for today meeting. After this, you can finish your job sheet and code your PHP using MySQL. Okay, thank you for your attention and see you next week.